Aloha class, I wanted to go over the computing and interpreting the conservative index. And so this was created by S.J. Gray in 1980. So Sidney John Gray came up with this instrument for comparing two separate sets of accounting standards. And so the purpose of this worksheet is to enable students to quickly prepare new practice sets for computing the conservative index and the average index, and for verifying the computations and interpretations. So from Canvas, you can see the whole explanation of the background of an index and how to compute it. So it's just reiterated over here, right? So 1 minus US GAAP earnings minus IFRS earnings divided by the absolute value of US GAAP earnings. And so we are comparing IFRS to GAAP, right? Because GAAP is in the denominator. And looking at which one is more conservative or less conservative or equally conservative. So if you look at this practice set, if you have the macros enabled, you can be able to reset the numbers, and the random numbers will generate here and populate over here. And so this is your basic formula: 1 minus US GAAP minus IFRS earnings divided by the absolute value of US GAAP. And so if this is kind of hard to internalize just based on these cell values, you can break it down or just double check what is in the formula. How do we get to this 2.3? So and especially since there's this 1 minus, this always kind of throws some students off, or even me off, trying to, take that 1 minus out. So I usually leave that for the end. So if you're looking at the US GAAP, so for instance, you would do 20 minus the IFRS earnings, 46, right? 20 minus 46, and you'd put that in parentheses, and then divided by US GAAP earnings. And so if this was a negative 20, I would know that I would do a positive 20 because it's the absolute value. And so that's just kind of something that I would do in my head, or I would ask myself before I finish computing. But of course, Excel can do that absolute value for you as well, just in the formula that's already created in this Excel sheet. But since I know it's already positive, I can just put 20, right? And then an equal sign for my formula. So negative 1.3. And then that was just this part in these brackets, in these parentheses. So then I would do equals 1 minus this amount. And since it's minusing a negative number, it'll turn positive. So 2.30 is what was calculated, right? So we just double check that. And then as we interpret that, we see that the conservative index is greater than 1. So IFRS is less conservative than US GAAP. So that's how you would interpret that, right? And so same thing with the other ones. You could do 93. You can change this up, 93 minus 51. This is just a long version, Once you understand the concept, you can easily put it in the formula and understand what's going on. Divided by 93. So I see it's 4.45, and then I would take equals 1 minus 0.45, and we see that it's 0.548, or 0.55 rounded, right? 0.55 rounded. And that would mean, since it's less than 1, that means that IFRS is more conservative than US GAAP, right? Just as our calculation goes. And then, so just make sure if it's an absolute value, if it's a negative US GAAP number, that you take the absolute value. This example didn't have that, didn't produce that. And then a simple average, right? Just take the average. So if I were to do that manually, equals the sum of these 3 divided by 3. Hopefully that will load for us. Nope. Oh, there you go. There's your simple average. So the the average of those, right? I summed them up and I divided them by 3, and then the median. The median is the middle number, so you take out the lower number, the higher number, and then you're left with the median. And that's just a simple tutorial of how to interpret the conservative index, calculate the conservative index, as well as the simple average and the median. Thank you.